but that's like saying, are you concerned you work for the U.S. government and they do all these other things, right? So, I mean,
Well, I
the
mean,
reality is that that's that how that world works, right? You have people who work in the industry, who work in government, who are connected, and that's kind of like
no, no, but
the market that a lot of people work.
there's a difference between compromise and flat out corruption in broad daylight. All right, welcome. You are listening to The Brown Perspective. This is RO, and I'm here with the one and only Eduardo. What's going on?
Hey, not much. How are you?
Good, good. Did you get a chance to follow the craziness with GameStop last week?
I'm rich. I'm rich. I'm rich. I'm rich. Yeah, I did. It's kind of unexpected.
Did you open up your Robinhood account to try to gamble also with everyone else?
Well, it's funny because I'm thinking about starting a brokerage account, but it was for different reasons. Actually, my partner got really into it, so she's been actually tracking the market, and for me, like I understand the market from economics, from sort of business education.
Hmm.
I understand it intellectually, but obviously there's people who live it, who work in that environment, and then there's people who are, some of them may be educated, some of them not, because in reality the stock market is a hustle, and who's a hustler, right? And everybody across the board can be a hustler, particularly if you are from a place where you have to hustle to survive.
But when I think about the stock market, to me, it's just a huge, huge casino at this point, and all you're
Hmm.
doing is gambling. And if you have fundamentals, and if you go to try to play the market based on fundamentals, you're probably going to get wrecked because the fundamentals just don't make any more sense. When you have companies like Tesla that are worth more than all the automobile companies combined, how can Tesla be worth more than a company like Toyota? Tesla that doesn't make nearly a fraction of the vehicles that Toyota makes, right? So there's it's a bubble economy. That's my take on it. And no other there's no better example, I think, than just the craziness of what's been going on with the market than what we saw with GameStop and then AMC and a few other companies. But really, GameStop is the one that has gone viral in terms of the short selling, and then the Reddit Wall Street Bets group targeting that specific hedge fund. But let's get a little bit into that because I do want to get your take on it in terms of what it means, what you're reading into it, and also the response from both the Democrats and the Republicans. But so let's talk just a little bit, do a quick recap of what happened this past week with GameStop.
You can go ahead and do the recap. I think for me, just want to say that now that I've been living in Southern California, I have an issue with the equating the stock market with the casino because in some ways, you know, out west, you definitely go to the casino a lot, mainly Vegas. So I
Yeah,
think that when you go to casino, you have a good time usually.
yeah.
And yes, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but in the process, you're having a good time. And I know our folks back in the East Coast, we had our casinos too. I didn't go to them growing up, but because of our Mohegan Sun, Foxwoods, we also have some casinos close by, so we get the some of the casino experience, but obviously not to the level of the West Coast.
Mm. Okay. So you're saying there's even though you lose your money, you got some entertainment value out of it in the process?
Yeah, and you also win, right? So I think that
Not all. I
by
mean, you're
bet
more than likely just based on probability. It's you're most people are going to lose.
that's true, but that's true. But then if you join the casino and you become a frequent member, you start getting discounts on being there. And I know obviously all that money
Yeah,
goes to
you're still
whoever owns
losing
the
in the end.
casino.
You're just trading. You're trading all your money for some type of privilege or whatever accommodations they give you. But at the end of the day, you're giving them you're giving them your money, right?
Yes,
That's why they
but you
take
at
care
least
of
you're
you. If
enjoying
you
the process.
Yeah, and so you get to enjoy it. But so anyway, going back to what happened with GameStop, you have a hedge fund or also not just the hedge fund became like the poster for what's been happening, but there were other investors too that they just felt like, GameStop has a business model that is just not sustainable because everything is brick and mortar. So they're not going to be around in like a decade or even
Yeah.
before that. Same thing, same as with Blockbuster. So all these people are making short bets on it, betting that the stock is going to go down. And just quickly, when it comes to short betting, is really someone is willing to lend you their assets, and then you go and you
Which
do
which
whatever it is.
I don't understand, by the way.
Yeah, that's what that just to like the easiest way to explain short selling. It's gambling, and let's say
But
that
with another person's asset. So my question is, why would I give you my asset knowing that you probably gonna go
because
um
I'm gonna charge you interest, and because I'm actually also betting against you in a way. But either way, it's a good chance that I'm gonna make money because it's an extremely risky bet. So, for
mhm,
example, let's just try to do an analogy with bicycles, right? Let's say that you have a bike, and
mhm.
this bike has some value to both of us and to our community, but I know that your bike is going to be worth a lot less like in 2 weeks because of something's going to happen. Maybe like some shipment's going to come in with new bikes, and or I just have a feeling where I'm going to go and do something shady. I just have a gut feeling that your bike's going to be a lot less. And I tell you this and you're like, well, no, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think my bike is going to hold its value. So I say, well, let me borrow your bike. I'll give it back to you in 2 weeks. And you'll say, well, okay, I'll let you borrow it, but in the meantime,
You're crazy.
you have to pay me some interest on it for using it, and I expect to get it back in 2 weeks. So that's what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
You're gambling with me as well. You're letting me borrow your bike. I'm going to go and do something with it, and then I tell you that I'm going to give it back to you in 2 weeks, and you're going to get your bike back plus interest. Plus, if your bet works out the way that you think it is, I'm probably going to have to give you even more money to make up for the fact that my bet didn't go the right way. So all of that is built into the short selling. There's a benefit for those that are lending the assets. Otherwise, why would they do it? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Exactly.
Like, who would lend you an asset if they're not going to make anything out of it? Come on, this is economics, econ 101. They're getting something out of it. So that's why all these brokers are willing to lend the stock to someone else. And what they do is they turn around and they sell it immediately because they think that the stock price is going to go down. And when it goes down, then they buy it again, and then they give it back to you and they take the profit. So that's essentially what a short sell is. I don't want to get into the whole issue with like margin calls and all of that and the initial deposit they have to do, but basically you understand the gist of it, that if the price goes up, then I'm screwed because I was betting on that price to go down.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening here with GameStop is, again, because it's a brick and mortar business, a lot of people were actually thinking, yeah, this company is not going to be around very long. We're going to short it because we think that its price is going to go down.
And what's a hedge fund for folks who may not know what a hedge fund is?
Just private money that is out there investing in the market. That's the gist of what it is. And by the way, a lot of these hedge funds are, a lot of people blame these hedge funds in part, or that they had a big part in what happened in the 2008 crisis, because
Yep.
it's all gambling, and these guys were
Yeah.
gambling big, and then when everything went south, the government steps in and bails them out. So
Yeah.
a lot of the resentment and hatred from the Reddit community that was targeted at this particular hedge fund that decided to short GameStop. I think it's called Melvin Capital. Let me see the name of the actual hedge fund.
Yeah, and I think that anger, that rage is both on the right and on the left. I think that rage is the same type of rage that sort of empowered the Trump voter, and it was also empowered the Bernie supporter, just like the unfairness that they've seen because of what happened in 2008.
Yeah, so the main one is Melvin Capital, and so their short was that GameStop was, the stock was going to go lower, and usually there's different type of risk that you can take when you short a stock, because you can say, well, I think it's going to go down like 5% or 10% or 50%. These guys were saying that it was going to go down pretty much all the way to zero, and this is where things get interesting with this type of strategy, because effectively what you're doing is you're borrowing stock from someone,
Hmm.
and then you're selling it immediately. And if you're doing that like aggressively and you're a hedge fund that has a ton of money, then you can see how that's going to impact the price because you're offloading a whole bunch of stock into the market. It's going to push the price down. And if you're a hedge fund, then chances are you carry influence, and other people are going to see that, and then the sentiment is going to turn
Hmm.
negative. Even if it was already negative, it's going to turn even more negative towards that company. So in a way, it could become a self-fulfilling thing where just by this company taking that action to say it's going to go out of business, it may actually trigger GameStop going out of business within a year or two. Whereas maybe if you would have let it just run its course, it would have taken longer, maybe 10 years, and maybe they would have found a way to actually recover, to get into
Mm.
digital sales and to turn around. So you can think of this as this company effectively trying to bankrupt GameStop.
Well, that's
Uh,
interesting because, and the other argument is that you need a company like that to help, get rid of the failing companies or the companies that are are not, solid. They're not, they shouldn't be. So I think that's one of the positive functions that the market has for a hedge fund, right? They kind of help
well,
uh,
I
in
think
a way.
Yeah, well, I think you're talking about the mechanism of short selling, which is
Hmm.
if there's a company that's like overinflating its books, or it has a PR campaign that says that we're doing amazing things and we're gonna go here, and they're inflating the actual value of their company. Then
Yeah.
if a really smart investor comes along and says, yeah, I call BS on these guys, that stock price is not gonna go up that high. I'm gonna short it, and that actually, yeah, that provides somewhat of a balance. So the ability to short a company, that's it's gambling, really. I mean, all of Wall Street is gambling, when
Hmm.
you get down to it. But shorting companies does serve a purpose in that it keeps these other actors in place from trying to exploit people and inflating their books. It keeps them honest. But
Hmm.
just because this is a hedge fund and because of the sentiment against Wall Street hedge funds, and so and also it might have to do something with the gaming community as well, where this is probably our generation. Maybe it even spans maybe a few people, a few decades, like people in their 30s, people in their 20s, that have some type of connection to GameStop, and they just felt like it was the little guy against David versus Goliath, and they wanted to step in.
Yeah.
And also, it also made sense from an investment point of view because Melvin Capital, their short position is public. So these guys in the Reddit channel, the Wall Street Bets, they saw an opportunity to say, hey, this hedge fund is being pretty reckless because they're betting that it's going to go all the way down to zero. Well, what if we get all this support against it and make the price go up, and then we can actually make this hedge fund go bankrupt? And so a whole bunch of people started signing up to doing that because they were like
Hmm.
a way to stick it to this hedge fund and
The
finally
power of
have a
social
small
media
win. What's that?
networks. The power of social media
Yeah, yeah,
networks.
and so we get to the real issue here, which is the response to this, because this is why I've always said this in a few of our other discussions is if people collectively, it's the people that have the power,
Yep.
and in a way you can think of governments and leaders, part of their job is to make people think that they don't have that power, or to divide and conquer, so that because when the people do work together, dude, they can bring about like havoc. They can overthrow government, and that's always a dangerous thing. So now we're
Yeah.
seeing that in the past you've never had a technology like social media that can bring so many people together around a common cause. And then also with the introduction of retail trading companies like Robinhood that
Hmm.
allow just your average person to trade. So
Yeah.
so anyway,
Well,
but go ahead.
there's that sense that Wall Street got bailed out in 2008, while a lot of people lost their home and their wealth, and right now we're coming out of a pandemic, another economic crisis, and that anger, the power of the people to overthrow was evident on January 6th. And I think now a larger portion of the people, particularly those who elected Democrats and President Biden, who want the government to bail them out, right? So they're saying, we went through a pandemic, we're going through a crisis. You bailed out Wall Street. Now you need to bail us out. and you need to make sure that you help us through this crisis. So I think whether it's around making sure that the vaccines get done, and then also just getting money into pockets, stopping um, and evictions and all those things. So I think in some ways it is the people currently wanting a bailout. So this kind of just exacerbated that sense too, because then you see how what the reaction was, which was, oh, we need to do something about this because a company like Robinhood cannot. And I guess to take it a step further, they stopped actually trading on GameStop, and I think part of the issue was it because Wall Street told them to, or was it because they didn't have enough capital to make all the purchases that people were making on that particular day?
I'm surprised that they would pull something like that, because they prevented people from buying it, but if you wanted to sell it, then that was okay. So effectively, they were trying
Mm.
to manipulate the price so that it would go back down. And so this Melvin Capital hedge fund, it had to close its short position, but also it needed a new infusion of money. And I think it was like 2 point something billion that it got just to cover the losses that it was going to have with this short squeeze. And so the company that invested in Melvin Capital is also one of the either the largest client or a partner with Robinhood.
Mm.
So they must have just called somebody in Robinhood and then said, "Hey, we need you guys to stop this," because they may have had some partnership before with Melvin Capital, or they saw an opportunity to go in there and get it while it's in distress. And the other point about this also is that I remember there was a bit of a controversy with Janet Yellen for those
Hmm.
speaking fees, where she made almost $1 million, and a lot of people were saying, well, that's just sexist. You don't say that when men do it, even though men do also get criticized when they do that. Well, it turns out that company that paid her like large amounts of money also for a speaking arrangement. It's this same company that
Mm.
just invested 2 billion into Melvin Capital. So I think this is all just fueling the anger, because it's already, the group on Reddit it's already taken the position that it's the little guy against these hedge funds. And then they see that the wealthy are interconnected and they just take care of each other. And
Yeah.
then there was an article, it may have been from Bloomberg or some other, that it said, oh, if the losses are significant for Melvin Capital, they may need a bailout. They just like casually throw it out there that the government is going to have to step in and bail them out. And so this is the frustration with so many people, that what free market? Where is the free market? It's socialism for private industry when it's in
Hmm.
trouble, and it's predatory capitalism for everyone else.
Very true. And that is what causes a lot of the anger. And I think we will be remiss if we don't give a shout out to Janet Yellen, a fellow Brown alum. Actually, she went to Pembroke College, but
Yeah.
part of the Brown Pembroke College and Brown are the same institution, shared history, and she becomes the first female Secretary of Treasury. So that's pretty significant. And speaking of another voice of our time,
Oh, AOC.
yes.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's all that's good about Janet Yellen, but dude, aren't you concerned that she would get paid so much by a company that now asked Robinhood to stop trading just so it could benefit? Yeah, I think she's.
Of
I
course, of course, I'm concerned, but that's like saying, are you concerned you work for the U.S. government and they do all these other things, right? So, I mean,
well, I
the
mean,
reality is that that's that how that world works, right? You have people who work in the industry, who work in government, who are connected, and that's kind of like the
no, no, but
the the market that a lot of people work.
there's a difference between compromise and flat out corruption in broad daylight, collusion. I mean, it sounds like, let's not get into the whole topic of just normalizing government corruption, because
Hmm.
we shouldn't be okay with this. Even if government's supposed to work a certain way, it's supposed to be slow. The cogwheels turn slowly, and there's give and take. There's some level of like always backroom deals, but dude, this is like out in broad daylight. What's happening now? And it wasn't even like the central exchanges that stopped the trading. It was just Robinhood that did it,
Yeah.
and they didn't even stop it completely from buying and selling. They just stopped the buying.